I sent a couple takes to my buddy Tyler, and I sent some to VOX&HOPS and my buddy Shelby, and I was just like, hey, I'm working on this, and they were like, dude, that's pretty cool, man. Like, you should keep going. Like, don't stop with that, and then I just kind of kept just plugging along. I'd get done with work, work, it was like abridged work, so I'd like try to do what I could do, and then we'd go on a run just to like clear my head and get outside, and then just like sit down and, for 6-8 hours just straight through, just learning audio engineering and trial and error, writing riffs, playing stuff, and figuring out what was going to work.
Hey, what's up, Vox and Hops heads? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, brought to you by Sound Talent Media and Evergreen Podcasts, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians to talk about their lives, music, and craft beer. I hope you had a glorious weekend. I most certainly did. This Vox and Hops episode is presented by Heavy Montreal. Heavy Montreal is Montreal's premier metal promoter, and I have teamed up with them to bring you Heavy Montreal Presents VOX and Hops Brewtal Montreal, which will be taking place on December 17th at Corona Theater here in Montreal. This is the first edition of a true metal and beer festival happening in Montreal, and I am very, very stoked about it. Performing at this year's event, we have my band Cryptopsy alongside my friends in The Agonist, The Great Sabatini, Necrotic Mutation, and Burning the Oppressor. All night long, you'll be able to enjoy amazing craft beers by some of Quebec's best breweries, such as BG Brasserie Urbaine, Messorum Brassatorium, Brasserie du Bas-Canada, Sir John Brewing Company, Cinquième Baron, and Brasseur de Montréal. I am so excited about this festival. I can't wait to be there, to look out into the crowd and enjoy life, metal, and craft beer all together. I am very, very stoked to have Heavy Montreal behind the Vox and Hops podcast. You should go and pick up your tickets for this if you are planning on coming to this show, because tickets are selling extremely quickly, and I would hate for you to miss your chance to come to this amazing event. Grab your tickets via the link in the description of this podcast. Before we jump into today's episode, I would just like to ask you to follow the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast on your favorite podcast platform. But more than that, I would love it if you were to write a review for the podcast. Now, why do I want you to do that? Well, you have to imagine that when someone is looking for a brand new podcast to try out, what do? They scroll down, they look at those reviews, and if that podcast has a bunch of great reviews, well, they're most likely going to give that podcast a chance. So by you writing a review for the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, you could actually be the person that makes someone become a brand new Vox and Hops head, and that would be something that I would truly appreciate. Now, today on the podcast, I'm with Jamison Kester of Labored Breath. Get ready, everyone. This is Vox and Hops episode number 307.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today, I'm with Jamison Kester of Labored Breath, Wild Hunt, Void Omnia. Jamison, how are you doing?
Matt, I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me on your show today.
Well, I had to, you see, because you were a part of Brewtal North America, and those brews were intended to be made for Vox and Hops alumni only. Now, you have a very special story when it comes to being a part of Brewtal North America, and all of that ties to the metal architect, Jerry Monk, the man himself. He hit me up as he was putting together a Brutal Awakenings playlist saying, Matt, this Labored Breath dude, I think he's into beer. Maybe it'd be a good person for you to interview. And I was like one step further. I was like, maybe I could get him as a part of Brewtal North America, because I knew you were in California. I had no breweries out there as a part of Brewtal North America yet. So I'm very happy to be with you tonight to seal and conclude my Brewtal North America alumni status of all of my guests. So Jamison, I'm very stoked to be with you, very much so.
Well, I'm really stoked to be here, man. It was such a killer opportunity to be a part of Brewtal North America. Just, having that both tying into craft beer and metal already, things that are just like, integral pieces of my life and have been for pretty much as long as I can remember. Probably even definitely legally before the beer part was supposed to. But yeah, man, it was a killer experience. You put together such a heavy hitter list of bands and breweries, and It's definitely an honor to be a part of it. I'm really stoked to be able to wrap things up and then have this conversation with you today.
It's the perfect ending. We're doing it backwards, but it's interesting to do it this way because we could talk about your experience about it, but we'll touch that further. First, I want to hear about how you coped with this glorious pandemic, which is lingering on, but seems to be going away, but might come back. We're not quite sure where it is at yet. How did you cope with everything?
Well, to be perfectly honest, my initial coping mechanism was writing Dyspnea, the Labored Breath album. It was something like doing a solo album was something I've always wanted to do. It always feels kind of silly saying like a solo album, but it's what it is. And it was with work, with life, with just playing in bands and being active and touring and stuff like that. It's of course hard to commit the time to not only like writing and recording a record, but also learning audio engineering, which is something I had like very little knowledge of prior to, which was maybe like my biggest hurdle across the last probably 2 decades of never having tried to delve into it. So that was my biggest coping mechanism initially, was being able to pour the first like 4 or 5 months, I'd say, of like anguish and anxiety and anger and like hopelessness that I think everybody was maybe feeling into a really creative outlet. And it's definitely something. It's certainly not the first time a solo album has ever been recorded or by any means, but it was something I'd wanted to do, and it gave me the opportunity and again the coping mechanism to do so. Besides that, man, I drank a lot. Like I think everybody had to kind of a couple times maybe curtail that and kind of look at what you're doing and say like, dude, I'm drinking like 6 double IPAs, between like, I'm also in the beer industry, and I kind of am vetted already, and I've bartended for years and whatever, but I'm, having to really kind of roll that back. So that was another coping mechanism. I was working the whole time though, so I was really fortunate. Where I work, they held us on. We were able to continue doing what we're doing, and yeah. But I'd say the main coping mechanism was writing and releasing an album. So it gave me the opportunity to do so.
Well, that is a very healthy and unhealthy way to get through a pandemic. Healthy being creative and creating Dyspnea, the killer solo one-man, just very disturbing music all by yourself.
Thank you.
I think that's very healthy. Craft beer, on the other hand, can be fun, and I love it, but too much of any good thing is a bad thing. But Vox and Hops is all about hanging out with my metal friends and talking about their lives, music, and craft beer. And I'm very curious as to if you're going to be sharing a beer with me tonight, or if you're in one of those times where you need to hold back because you've been enjoying too many double IPAs recently.
Well, I don't drink a whole lot of double IPAs these days, and fortunately, I do practice moderation pretty regularly, and in doing so, I try to also drink some lighter stuff. So. I kind of know if you can see that. That's Penn Brewery's Kaiser Pils. That's what I'm sipping on right now. I'm actually from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania originally. I'm on my like 2-week vacation. I'm actually in the room that I grew up in.
Wow.
My mom's reconverted into like, flowery walls and stuff like that. There used to be like, suffocation posters back there and shit like that. But yeah, so I'm actually at home drinking Pennsylvania Pittsburgh brewery. So I got this one. Then I also have a backup from Dancing Gnome Brewery, which is like a newer craft brewery. Not to say that these guys aren't, but this is like a single hazy pale ale, and it's kind of their flagship. And so when I was at their tap room the other day, I asked them like, hey, like what would you guys say is your flagship? They do a lot of IPAs, whereas like Penn Brewery does classic German style. I mean, they do IPAs as well, but they're like craft beer before craft beer was cool kind of thing.
Love it.
So I have both of these, one that I'm going to probably drink pretty quickly after a 20-mile bike ride, and then the other that I'm most likely going to sip on towards the end before I fade into obscurity.
They both sound delicious, and a 20-mile bike ride is a good way to fight the hops and to stay in shape despite working in the beer industry and enjoying beer moderately. On my side, I'm going to be enjoying a Brewtal North America collab. This is the Agonist and Le Fermentor's Brew as my guide. It's a double dry hopped IPA. It's not supposed to be or intended to be. It's supposed to be something that's crushable, sneaky, something that goes down well. I feel that it feels a little bit like a West Coast IPA, which is why I chose it for you tonight, because I know that's what Dyspnea was, your collab with Ghost Town. So that's why I chose this tonight. 7%. I'm going to pour this out, and I'm very curious to hear about your very first beer, Jamison.
Oh, man. God, I don't think I can remember that far back, to be honest. I definitely probably was sipping off the bottle when I was literally sipping off a bottle. But realistically, then maybe I'd say like the first beer that I really, maybe when I was in like high school and I was at a party that really hit me, and that I was like, damn, like you can do this kind of shit with beer. I think was the Victory Golden Monkey.
Oh yes.
Which I you probably, it sounds like you remember more than I do. Right now I think it's like a double, maybe it's a Belgian triple.
Yeah,
it's a Belgian triple. It's like spiced, and I just remember being at a party and drinking probably too many of those, more than I should have, but because I didn't know my limit, whatever. But just really that was the beer that kind of made me realize what the kind of potential and flavor profiles, nuances that already existed in craft beer. I mean, this is probably back in like 99, 2000, somewhere in there, 2001 maybe. So I would say that that's definitely the one that like really hit it home for me. But I've been enjoying libations for a long time.
Oh, cheers to those libations.
Cheers, man. Good to do this with you. Thank you.
Ooh, still smells fruity. Still got that little West Coasty Belgian almost tang. Really crushable, subtle, citrusy, flowery, very enjoyable. Le Fermentor, the Agonist, amazing. Brew as my guide. I want to hear about the soundtrack of your youth when you're growing up in that room.
So actually, yeah, if you look right back there, that's where I had my 12 disc boom box or something like that.
The question is not that. The question is, what music did your parents or guardians listen to while you were in this room trying to drown it out with what was coming out of that 12 disc changer there?
God, dude, they were probably listening to a lot of country back then,
Yeah.
like might have been like Garth Brooks or something,
Mhm.
Whoever did Boot Scoot Boogie. I remember was
my dad liked that too. Yeah.
Okay, right on. If
was Brooks and Dunn?
Was that Brooks and Dunn? Yeah.
It might be.
It very well could be. I'm not gonna lie. If I hear that come on a jukebox, like pre-COVID days, I'd still be like, I'd like kind of nod my head and maybe even sing the chorus a little bit. But
I thought you were gonna get up and do the dance.
Definitely not, man. I'm not even wearing pants right now, actually.
Pants are
just
optional.
kidding. Just kidding. As soon as I got to Pittsburgh, I had to buy a fresh pair of cams because they were like $9 from Walmart. So
amazing.
Yeah, dude, you can't go wrong with Walmart camo shorts. But
hell no.
Yeah, no, soundtrack to my youth though, probably when maybe country or Depeche Mode Violator was blasting, which is a great album. Let's be real. Was probably like early stuff, like when I was like 10 or 11. Obituary, World Demise. I had that on tape when I was like 10. And I remember my buddies who were older than me, they were like it was like all camo shorts and like Cannibal Corpse shirts and shit like that. And they gave me, my buddy Greg gave me World Demise. And I just remember like listening to that tape and being like just, this is just so pissed. And I was, I was like, a great childhood, a great family and stuff like that. It wasn't, but like, it was awesome music and it totally like called to me. Right. But, Cannibal Corpse, I remember the first time hearing that on tape, it was maybe like The Bleeding. And
Yes.
I had no idea what I was listening, because I was like next level, like Obituary, like those riffs are real hooky, and like John Tardy's vocals, like you can kind of pick out what he's saying a little bit, but like, early Chris Barnes specifically, like it was just grunts and, those like ugly gutturals, which we all love so much. Right. But it was just like, I remember hearing that shit and I was like, this sounds like chainsaws. Like, I want to know more, but and then, like lots of Suffocation, Dillinger Escape Plan, Calculating Infinity blew my mind.
Yeah.
Fucking Cryptopsy, of course, like was like one of those bands that just like absolutely slayed. early Origin, pretty much like anything Willow Tip was putting out, which is based out of Zelienople, like Rune, Colobos, all that stuff. And then a lot of like Relapse stuff. Early like Roadrunner stuff was always kind of cool too, but that was like a little bit more, I would say like mainstream sounding a lot of times. But yeah, and this very room is like, totally where I learned how to shred. And this very room is like where I, just, yeah, consumed as much music as I possibly could. Meshuggah's Chaos Sphere was another one.
Yes.
And, Contradictions Collapse, when they did None, they did that split. I got that at a Bull Moose Music up in Maine. And I just remember being like, what is this drummer doing? Like, it's like Metallica with like jazz drums, but, Chaos Sphere, of course, totally next level. And it totally changed that style of music, because they're like the forefathers of the whole, they're the original gentlemen, if you will.
They are indeed.
Yeah.
How about your first live music experience?
I went to see the first like metal rock show. I think it was not 2000. Really recent, 96. It was at Coca-Cola Star Lake Amphitheater. Maybe it was just Star Lake Amphitheater, which is out in like Burgettstown, like southwestern Pennsylvania. And it was Rage Against the Machine, Atari Teenage Riot, and Wu-Tang Clan.
Wow,
and
eclectic.
It was a weird tour. I don't remember what the tour was. I actually heard that they were going to rehash Rage Against the Machine and Wu-Tang Clan doing a tour again. The pandemic, I don't know where that's at, but yeah, my dad dropped my sister and I off at that show. I think I was starting 6th grade, maybe 7th grade. It was like the night before, and he like begrudgingly took us because I was just so in love with, Rage Against the Machine.
How much older was your sister? Sorry.
She's like 3 or 4 years older than me.
Wow, cool parents.
Yeah. My parents are awesome. We just went on like a 20-mile bike ride today. My fiance is with me as well, so they're still. And then we get back and we just start slamming beers.
I love it.
Yeah.
I cut you off though. You were saying that you love Rage Against the Machine.
Oh yeah. Just when I was a kid. That was my first show. And then I think like the first like metal show was around that same year. I mean, because I was like an eclectic mix, was Earth Crisis, who I loved straight edge hardcore, although I've never been a straight edge kid. But I loved it. It was Earth Crisis, Madball, Hatebreed. I think Strife was supposed to play, but they dropped off. Instead, they got oh God, what was that band that did It's All About the Drugs and the Money? Scarhead as well. And I had this Star Wars Yoda hat, and like me and my buddy are like trying to like pit. We're just so little, but nobody was giving. It was at Club Laga back in Pittsburgh, and everybody was cool. Like that was I think like the first like metal show, and that totally changed my perspective as to like how like heavy music is played live, and like what a scene is like, and maybe just want to be part of it that so much more.
Incredible. At such a young age too, to be at the two different vast spectrums, to go from the huge rage show to the much smaller hardcore straight edge show, different ambiances, different people going at such a young age is so formative. How about your first time on stage? And what instrument were you playing?
Besides playing like in 8th grade, my 8th grade it was like more like a Machine Head Skin Lab cover band. We didn't cover the songs. We might as well have tried to just sound exactly like those two Bay Area bands, but from Pittsburgh. Besides like some house shows, I remember playing Millville Industrial Theater, which was this like super weird industrial park that was right off of Route 28. For anybody who's familiar with Pittsburgh, or if you've ever driven through parts of it, it's like it's a highway that's like 50, 60 miles per hour. And then there was just this like, okay, you're going south towards the city. And then you have to like hard right up this like giant, like pothole hill to this industrial theater. And I played bass in like a punk hardcore band. I was like 14 or something like that. And it was with that first show was with Crisis. I think that was like the big thing. Crisis was like, we were like so stoked to be opening for Crisis. And that was a pretty, pretty cool experience.
Absolutely. And how did that show go? Were you prepared? Were you ready?
Dude, we were, high school punk hardcore band wanting to like throw it down. I mean, we didn't screw up. We played the set, we were like pretty active in the Pittsburgh like punk metal scene. Got to open for like Anal Cunt. Got to play a lot of shows like Circle of Dead Children and like Sadist Euphoria. So like we kind of like merged and got like heavier and heavier. But like that first show, we didn't totally botch it. So they asked us back. We got to play there again. So that was cool.
Well, kudos to you for pulling it off. At 14. Let's talk about working in the beer industry. You're at Almanac Beer Co. right now. How long you been there? How did you end up working in the beer industry?
Yeah, I've been with Almanac for, I just actually celebrated my 3-year anniversary with them. Thanks, man. Yeah, it was a cool thing. They're a great company. They make amazing beer for anybody who's not familiar. Tons of barrel-aged sours, but also like really awesome IPAs, lagers. I mean, anything that they try to make, honestly, they're going to make very well. The brewery's just done super well, specifically during the pandemic. It's all a pretty new facility that came in 2017, but it's like a 10-year-old brewery. And so, now we're just like cranking. We're just trying to keep production going for all of the placements that we've landed and kind of the opportunities that we worked for have hit. And so now we're just making beer for that. But I got into them after coming back from a tour. Void Omnia did like a 2-month tour and got back from that. And I was like, I got hit by a car actually on my bicycle right after the tour. I didn't have health insurance. I was fine. But it was one of those things that kind of made me go like, dude, I need to get health insurance. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. They were able to like loophole me back onto Medi-Cal, fortunately, for this like weird window. But I have a background in being behind a bar, bartending. I was worked in the wine industry for about 8 or 9 years. So before getting into craft beer, I was in Napa and I did a lot of winery management. And so craft beer was like, to me, it's a lot more accessible. You get a lot more, we could have conversations like this. We can do a, Brewtal North America brew and collab with metal and beer and make it this crazy, awesome, successful thing. And there's this network of people that I identify with more than maybe, some of like the wine industry. Not that, the wine industry is awesome. Like there's some really
sure, there's a bunch of metalheads there.
You'd be surprised. You'd actually be surprised. But I think they're normally, a lot of times they're in production or they're, the winemakers. But not to pigeonhole anybody in the wine industry. But but in craft beer, it made a lot more sense. And so yeah, I've been with Almanac for 3 years and been crushing it, man. It's a great place to work. Like I said before, they kept myself. I'm a sales manager, and I'm one of 5 territory sales managers who cover really massive areas. And they kept us all on during the pandemic when like we literally couldn't go out and sell beer. It was just like stay home, be safe. We got you. Just do what you can. Try to be productive and
write a solo record,
dude. So yeah, totally. I mean, the owner literally bought. There's like 2 like super premium like gold embossed albums that Sentient Ruin, who put out the record, does for each of their releases. And the owner of Almanac, who used to be in a thrash band back in the day, Damien, he's a great dude. I kind of consider him a friend. I'll send him like Defeated Sanity and Putridity albums for him to listen to at the gym. But he's like that kind of cool, right? But he bought that like the custom deluxe record, so a lot of support there. Yeah, dude. Yeah, super cool. So it did give me the opportunity to do it, and the brewery was like nothing but supportive. A bunch of guys, brewers, people in the tap room bought the record, and yeah, it's a killer place to work.
That's phenomenal. Let's talk about your involvement in Brewtal North America a bit more. When we got into contact with each other via Instagram, actually, it was super easy, just sort of happened. And automatically, I assumed it would be with Almanac, but you automatically suggested to go with Ghost Town. which I thought was super cool because I was unaware of them. I played Oakland a bunch of times with Cryptopsy going through, and I had never been there. So I'm excited to go there now that I know that they make killer metal brews. And it was a cool, very quick turnaround into creating this beer. So let's talk about Dyspnea, the beer that we made together, and how that all came together.
Yeah, well, after we had that initial conversation, I was like, way floored that you'd even asked me, and I was really, really appreciative of it. So I actually, I was like immediately thought of Ghost Town, but I do work for a brewery that I know is super supportive. Like I said, they bought the record, and I asked our brewmaster Phil Emerson. I was like, hey, like, dude, this is an opportunity. What would you think about this? And he was like, I totally have your back. He's like, and you should do what you would like to do with it. Like, hands down, like, it's not going to ruffle any feathers here. Right. He's like, and I was like, well, it would make sense for me to work with Ghost Town because they're literally a metal brewery. I mean, they've done a collab with Mortuous before, like a killer Bay Area death metal band. I think they might have done a collab with Necrot. They were part of Decibel Metal and Beer. So, and all of their can art, if you haven't seen it, for anybody listening, it's like, all evil, awesome, repurposed stuff from like Hieronymus Bosch and, just terrible, torturous things that you want to look at while you're slamming a delicious West Coast IPA. But yeah, after like you and I had chatted and I talked to Phil and I pitched it to my buddy Steve Hood, who's actually the barrel program manager at Ghost Town. Not only do they make like awesome IPAs and lagers, but they also make really amazing barrel aged beers that have all just started to come out. So I hit up Steve. Steve was like, let me talk to Justin. Justin's their head brewer. And, Justin and I actually used to play shows back in the day, like 10 years ago when I first moved to the Bay. So yeah. And I actually, when I saw Justin like 2 years ago for the first time in a long time, I didn't even realize he was the head brewer at Ghost Town. So I was like, oh my God, this is like perfect. Like, Steve's a total metalhead. All the Ghost Town guys are total metalheads. I mean, we were listening to Dystopia the entire time we were brewing, so brought it up to them. We had the initial conversation, and they're actually installing they think they might have just finished installing a new brew house. So they were kind of like, well, we can do what we do because it's in the schedule. We can do like a West Coast or a hazy. And I was like, let's do a West Coast because you guys love to do a West Coast. And so they tossed it back to me, said like, all right, sweet. We'll write the recipe as far as like how we're going to brew it, but like what hops and what malt would you like? Here's the list. And so I got to pick those, which was really cool. I'm never really got to do that before. When it comes to being in the beer industry. I mean, I've been able to like blend wines and use my palate to determine which lots maybe taste better and like help identify like what percentages would go into making like a red blend or like a cad heavy blend, but I never got to really do that with beer. So it was a great opportunity and a great experience for me, and to be able to work with you and then all the other amazing artists and breweries that you had on your list was just like really just awesome thing to be a part of.
I'm so happy. And the beer was received well. It disappeared quickly. You were happy with the final results?
Oh, dude. I mean, I got 2 cases of that beer. They gave me one, and then I had some buddies specifically up in the Pacific Northwest who were like up in the Portland area, and they're all like, dude, like, let me get a 4-pack. And I was like, I don't know if they have distro up there. But I had a friend in town who I used to play in one of the old bands with, and he actually was like, "Oh, dude, I'm driving back up." So I split them off some. So all in all, I probably drank like almost collectively a case of that beer between my partner and I, because she likes drinking beer as well. And then I tossed some to some friends and stuff like that. I'd be drinking that right now, but you can't get it in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I think we released it back in May, so code dates wouldn't really hold out for that one. As a West Coast, I think it might have fallen apart, but.
Well, I'm happy. It looked delicious, and I'm happy that it worked out, that the connections of the universe aligned, and that it came out, and that it was delicious, and everyone was happy, and I love that. I would like to talk about Dyspnea and recording a solo record. Now, I may be wrong, but I believe you're the first guest that I've had on that has done everything themselves. So what were the major challenges of writing, recording, producing, releasing, getting signed to Sentient Brew and Laboratories. What were the major challenges?
Do you mind if I crack my next beer for this one?
Go for it. Yeah,
all right,
yeah.
sweet. This is a hazy pale ale from Dancing Gnome. They're a Pittsburgh brewery. They're pretty new. I visited there for the first time back in 2019, and they make lots of IPAs, but they said this is their flagship. So, the major challenge. There we go. That sounds good. The major challenge for me was actually learning audio engineering and recording. In my whole life, like every time I've been in a band, it's been like, all right, I'll write some riffs, you guys record, or we're going to go to record with somebody. And it's like, I kind of checked out in that process of it, that part of it. I might have listened like a fly on the wall in the room, but I never really like engaged in like a whole lot of audio engineering or like what these dudes were talking about. So it gave me the opportunity to rely on my resources, which was a lot of YouTube. But like really, the guys specifically in Wild Hunt, Avinash Mitter, he's like an incredible audio engineer and a good friend of mine. Harley Burkhart, who's also a great audio engineer, and Greg Brace, like they're all, Harley and Greg wrote the last Wild Hunt record after the passing of their last guitar player, who I eventually assumed his role. And so they did that album on their own, of course, with some background with audio engineering. But I was able to like ping those guys pretty much anytime I had like what's going on? Like this, my computer shut down, like this isn't working. And there was a lot of stuff that like, to be perfectly honest, I did incorrectly, things that I did backwards that like any person who has done it at least once would say like, what are you doing, you ding dong? Like, you know what I mean? Like you did this, like this, your signal chain is actually in reverse. And, but I did what sounded good to me. And then whenever it came time to like engineering the stuff and like showing it, like, maybe reamping with Avinash specifically, who helped me with a lot of the engineering. And he also ended up like basically mastering the majority of the album. I just sat there and drank beer next to him, but he was kind of like identified some things. And but yeah, that was the hardest part for me was like learning that software. I get audio, I get EQs, but I've always been kind of like a plug and play kind of guy. So this was more of like a plug and play, now get really under the hood and get nitty gritty with it. And I'm kind of have been hanging back. I mean, I've finished writing that stuff and doing everything for that album. I mean, that album was like finished in like August 2020, like done. So I haven't really touched working on any new metal since then. I've just been playing like classical flamenco guitar. So these new stuff has been gestating, and I'm kind of waiting until the fall hits and the mood is right, and I'm kind of back into the sedentary, gets dark early. I have like 5 hours once it gets dark to like brood over something. So I'm waiting to get back into that. But I kind of made a mental check note of things that I did right and I didn't do right on the album, and I'm gonna go through that whole list and try to button those things up. But inevitably, I'm sure there'll be other stuff that I do on Labored Breath 2, whatever that is, where I'm just like, damn it, why did I let this pass? Like, why did I let this go through? But I guess that's like any album anybody does.
It's like anything that we do, absolutely anything we do. And I completely can, I'm basically the same when it comes to Cryptopsy material. I'm in a band with Chris Donaldson, one of the best producers in the world. So I have no idea how to do anything production-wise. I just go and do my vocals and walk away, and he makes the magic happen. So I can completely understand where you're coming from. And having to learn everything on your side, it must have been very daunting.
Well, and there's a part of that, like you were just saying, that's also awesome and liberating. Like you can go in, bang it out, do your vocals, do your like whatever it is, and then step away and be like, all right, rest is up to you.
Complete trust. Because he's the best. I know he's the best.
Yeah, it's like falling backwards with your eyes closed and knowing he'll be there to catch you
every single time I'm in that booth. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was but it was definitely kind of that was a bit of the daunting thing, was just going in and doing it all myself.
Doing it yourself, that must have also been difficult because normally in a band you have other people to bounce ideas off of. How did you know it was good?
I definitely didn't. I think maybe when I started working on it, and thank you for that, by the way. I'll take that as that's a compliment. Thank you.
It is good.
Um,
I
Thank you. But I think it was one of those things where like maybe my fiance's in the other room, she's talking, she's just like, "That sounds cool." And I'm like, "You don't know," but she does. She's a piano player. She's a great, she listens to like metal too. I mean, it's not the only thing either one of us listen to, but it was that thing where I'd be like, "Yeah, okay." Okay, well, maybe I'm onto something. And then I sent a couple takes to my buddy Tyler, and I sent some to Avinash, my buddy Shelby, and I was just like, "Hey, I'm working on this," and they were like, "Dude, that's pretty cool, man. Like, you should keep going. Like, don't stop with that, And then, yeah, I just kind of kept just plugging along. I get done with work, work. It was like a bridge to work, so I'd like try to do what I could do, and then, we'd go on a run just to like clear my head and get outside, and then just like sit down, for 6-8 hours, just straight through, just learning audio engineering and trial and error, writing riffs, playing stuff, and figuring out what was going to work.
How about shows are coming back. Shows are happening in the States right now. So will there be a live version of Labored Breath, or is it only something that will ever be just a solo project, something that people need to consume in their ears?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. I've had a bunch of folks ask me about, like, dude, if you bring this live, can I play on this? Like, can I play? And it's all people. I'm like, I have no doubt that they could perform the stuff, because it's like, hey, if you can play guitar, you can play bass, you can scream, and you can play drums like this, then, and I know plenty of people who can, and just in the Bay Area alone, then I would definitely be willing to do it. I don't think I'm going to take the time and effort to relearn everything off of that album, which unfortunately I didn't tab out, or I didn't, I mean, I can sit there and hear it by ear, and I can kind of remember, and just knowing how I play as a guitarist and where I try to find notes, I could probably get it pretty close. But I don't think I would do that unless it was like, there was, maybe if Labor Breath 2, when Labor Breath 2 manifests, if there's an opportunity to bring it to life, and there seems to be like some genuine interest. But I'm not trying to do it and just, I'm not trying to do it and try to start a touring band with it or anything like that. It would just have to be kind of the right situation. But if not, then great. I'll just keep pumping out at least another album, or hopefully more.
Amazing. That's so cool that seasoned musicians and your friends want to be a part of this project.
Yeah, I agree. I'm flattered when some of the folks that I have worked with or played shows with, or or so, have been very complimentary of the album, and have also been like, "Dude, I'll help you bring this to life. Like, I'd love to play this live." And yeah, it'd be a cool thing to do maybe one day.
I'd be stoked to see that. If you could, now you already have a beer for Labored Breath, but if you could make another one, what would that be? What would you call it? What style would it be? And we can even take it a step further, because you work in the industry. What brewery would you like to pair up with? No disrespect to Ghost Town, if it's not them.
Oh, damn. All right, let me try to go back to the checklist. So if I could do it again, with, and it'd be like, just do another one. Maybe let's call it Labor Breath 2 with another, so it wouldn't be Dyspnea. It would be an entirely different album. I'd probably try to do like an oak aged lager or pilsner.
Yes.
I'm all about, good oak aging and seasoning up those barrels, getting them ready for whatever you might put them in. And I love lagers and pilsners, real crispy, like German style, maybe even like a West Coast, just to get a little bit more hops to it. But so I would definitely try to pursue that. As far as other breweries, I have some friends up in the Schuylerville area, Schuylerville, New York, a real small farmhouse brewery. And if I could just do another one, they're called Bound by Fate. And they stay open during the pandemic, and they like literally opened, had a crazy snowstorm, and then the pandemic happened. They managed to make it through, and they make awesome beers. And I might even just choose to like work with them. Like, you know, again, no disrespect by any means to Ghost Town, because like I'd love to do it with them too. But if it was like get another brewery, because they're just great people and they make awesome beer. I've had Brett's beer before, and he's shipped us some, and it's like overnighted, and it's just killer. And a lot of lagers, and make some really good hazies and stuff like that too. But I'd say probably like Bound by Fate Brewing, with like an oak aged, like foeder aged West Coast Pils or something like that.
That sounds delicious. You'd call it labor breath too. Is that it?
No. I don't know what I would call it. Maybe I'd call it. Geez, I don't even. That's a tough one. You got to come up with. You got to give me a little more time on that one, Matt.
Oak aged lager, labored breath.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll get back to you on that one.
No,
when
stress.
we make it, I'll pull one out.
Amazing. One last question, classic Vox and Hops wrap-up question. It probably doesn't happen to you very often now because you've learned to be moderate with your 6 double IPAs nights.
That was then. That was then.
From the beginning of the pandemic. But on those mornings after those nights, you must have a hangover cure. What is your hangover cure?
Hangover cure is definitely drink a very cold glass of water and then run 4 miles. Run 3 to 4 miles, whatever you can muster. If you're in an area that's safe enough to do it, or or you have the stamina, but it's never really sit around and feel sorry or feel like bad or crappy. Like if you can get up and push yourself out the door, you'll hate yourself while you're doing it. Hate yourself more than for the night before, but by the time you're done, you get home, cold shower, always a cold shower, just to like snap yourself back. And like literally every time I feel like a new person. So that would be my hangover cure. Cold water, run 3 to 4 miles, cold shower.
Seasoned veteran.
Unfortunately, yes.
Jamison, thank you so much for taking the time, having the chat with me, talking about your life, music, and craft beer. Everyone, go check out the record that came out on April 2nd via Sentient Ruin Laboratories, Dyspnea, Labor Breath's new record, before Labor Breath 2 comes into life. Go bask in the darkness of what the first record is. It's amazing, and you're going to enjoy it. Jamison, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. Cheers.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me on, man. It's a pleasure to do this.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. Man, did I ever have an excellent time connecting with Jamison. We had spoken a bunch of times via Instagram messages, via email chains, and I always got the sense that he was an excellent human, but we never actually had the chance to truly talk to each other, and man, did I ever have a great time. I know that I've connected with someone that I'm going to be good friends with for quite some time, and I hope that Jamison feels the same. I love this conversation. I love his first solo record. I can't wait to see what he comes up with for album number 2. Now, if you enjoyed this Vox and Hops episode, you should sign up to the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast mailing list. You can do that on my website, voxandhops.com. That's VOXandHOPS.com. And when you do that, you shall receive 1 email a week containing all of the details of everything that has happened throughout the past week in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, including all the details for any episodes which I dropped throughout the past week, if I've been a guest on someone else's podcast, as well as all of the pertinent information for any projects I have in the works before I announce them to the public. You also get the updated links for any future Thirsty Thursday virtual hangs, and of course the links to the Brewtal Awakenings playlist, which is curated by my man Jerry Monk, the metal architect himself, and is available on both Spotify and Apple Music. There's just so much going on in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, and I would hate for you to miss a single thing, so please sign up to that mailing list. The Vox and Hops Metal Podcast is brought to you by Sound Talent Media and Evergreen Podcasts. I hope you have a glorious rest of the week. I will be back next week on Tuesday with another brand new episode, but until then, I hope you remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox and Hops heads.